Well, hello. Thank you everybody for joining today. This is our webinar on 5 ways to use AI and automation to solve your seasonal challenges. We're so happy you're able to make it. In the Northeast, it's a beautiful spring day. Joined here today with Stacy and Ben. Um, you guys, I'll start sharing my screen here and then we can get started.
Okay.
Awesome.
So I'm Kevin Binko. I'm product marketing manager here at Phenom. I'm joined today with Ben Williams, vice president and head of sales of transportation retail. Ben, if you want to give yourself a little introduction.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Kevin. Good morning, all. Ben Williams here at Phenom. As Kevin mentioned, I lead our retail and transportation vertical here at Phenom. So get to talk about a lot of things every single day. But one of the things that comes up on a very regular basis is seasonal hiring. So really excited to chat with everybody about that today. And with me is our senior product manager, kind of focused on all things seasonal hiring, frontline high volume, Stacy Smeel. Stacy, I'll let you introduce yourself as well.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the webinar. I hope your week is going well so far. As Ben mentioned, I am senior product manager. I deal a lot with the talent acquisition automations. So this comes in handy. It's going to be one of the themes that you see throughout our webinar, hoping you can take some things away and put them into your own practice.
So if you ever joined a webinar or seen a presentation with Phenom, you might have seen this before. Our purpose here is helping 1 billion people find the right job. It's something that's really core to what we do, and it inspires all of the product innovations that we're making and the solutions that we're trying to deliver to our customers. Another thing about Phenom is we like to talk about what makes us different, and with our culture, we like to celebrate what makes our company different, and the individuals that consist of our company, what makes them unique. So a cornerstone of our onboarding program is each employee gets to share something that makes them unique. And I thought that would be cool if we do something like that today, maybe related to seasonal hiring. So I'll start off. One of my not normals is I could fold about 20 shirts a minute. And that comes from working at Black Fridays and seasonal over the summer at J. Crew in the Gap. So very efficient with my laundry and with recruiter efficiency there.
Kevin, I would pay you to transfer those skills to me, my friend. All right, cool. Well, I'll give you my not normal real fast as it pertains to retail. My first job was bagging groceries when I was 14 years old. And I was officially at one time the second fastest grocery bagger in the state of Missouri. That's pretty impressive, I know. But yeah, I can still bag a mean grocery sack nowadays. So that's my not normal. If we're at the grocery store, look out. I'm a mean bagger. Stacy, beat that.
I mean, I don't have anything on that speed, but my not normal would be that for a short period of time, I was paid to paint pumpkins. Raised in the Hudson Valley, I worked at a farm stand on an apple orchard. And part of that was once a week, we would pull in these little pumpkins and they'd pay me to paint faces on them. It's one of the funnest jobs I've ever had, actually.
That's awesome. And the farm stand season's coming up again. Seeing them pop up all around. I'm actually in the Hudson Valley now. So let's get started here.
Yeah, let's go ahead and take it away. So we're going to talk about a lot of things this morning. So really, we're going to focus on high volume, frontline, targeted, seasonal hiring, all of those terms. But one of the things we also want to talk about is probably the biggest buzzword in the world of talent today, which is artificial intelligence, automations, machine learning. And what does that mean? Well, it means that we can utilize technology to improve the processes when it comes to talent in general. Talent for today's purposes, we're really going to focus on talent acquisition. There are a lot of things that AI, machine learning automations can do in our world. Specifically as it pertains to talent acquisition, we're going to try to get targeted in our conversation this morning. So some of the things that we're going to focus on are, number one, recommendations. So when we think about the world of frontline, high volume, targeted hiring, whether it's the retail space or CPG, manufacturing, or transportation, it's all about matching the right person to the right job automatically. So one of the things that AI can assist us with is matching and making recommendations based on qualifications. Qualifications in this particular world, whether it's retail, transportation, manufacturing, can be location. So what can we do to match literally the closest job to that human at that point of interaction? AI can help with that. what can we do to match based on qualifications? And when we're thinking high volume or hourly or frontline hiring, we don't necessarily mean a full resume. It could be a few questions, screener questions, knockout questions, however you want to think of that. AI can help us match based on qualifications, but it can also assist with things like shift availability. So when we talk about manufacturing, for example, first, second, third shift availability, or if we're talking about transportation, over the road versus regional, or if we're talking working weekends in the retail industry, all of these elements of talent acquisition can be automated using AI. And we're going to talk about that throughout today. Awesome. Let's take a look forward. So when we think a little deeper about AI and automations, it's really about improving the candidate experience. In today's world, candidates in general have a pretty short shelf life. And it's because we as consumers, we're all hardwired. We need things immediately, and we need instant gratification. Just like we get that with our streaming services or our online shopping accounts, we expect the same thing in talent acquisition. And so now we're hardwired for this. The reality of it is 92% of all job seekers that see your jobs today, they're not going to apply. That's a really big chunk, 92%. That's a lot. So what we're seeing in the industry today is that organizations are really making an attempt to use AI, automations, machine learning to tackle this 92%. So Stacey, I'm curious, when we think about this massive number, right, this 92%, what are some of the things that you see on a regular basis that companies are trying to deploy, whether it's tactics or strategies to tackle this 92%? And then when they do, what are some of the benefits? What are the fruits of their labor when they can hit that?
Yeah, awesome question. We're having this conversation all the time. How do we increase conversions? How do we get more of those candidates who are starting the application process to see it all the way through? Some of the things that we're seeing are the clever use of automations. So being able to see a candidate in a certain status and being able to set up an automation to nudge them or urge them through the process. We see things like auto scheduling. So putting that up front for those candidates who pass certain qualifications to be able to set up their own interview, right? So to get that phone screen, that might motivate them to go back and finish a full application once they know they have some traction and they're able to move forward with the organization. We're also seeing big conversations around rethinking that application process, right? 92% are clicking apply and then dropping off at some point in the process. So what is going on in that application process? Are we asking 50 questions? Are we making them take a 40-minute survey or assessment? And the question back, in these conversations is that truly what's needed upfront as part of the process to understand if a candidate is truly qualified to talk to the team? So putting automations in place, having automated follow-up, having the ability for qualified candidates to schedule themselves for interviews, and taking a hard look at the application itself, trying to trim that down, make it more user-friendly. We're seeing that putting those types of changes into place is incrementally but steadily increasing our application rates. Another item, Ben, I want to be sure that we talk about is reaching candidates through multiple channels, right? Are you forcing them to go to the career site? This might be part of the problem. So being able to apply through SMS or WhatsApp, having a chatbot, which a lot of websites kind of use that as a career seeker personal assistant for their candidates. Having these multiple roads or channels that lead candidates to the same destination, which ultimately is that completed application. Here's another way that we're seeing an increase in conversions. And by putting these things in place with the increased conversions, of course, we're getting more candidates into that applicant status. This is what we want to see in our systems of record. Generally, that's our ATS. Generally, our candidates are more actionable in that state. But we're also able to ascertain with those completed applications who's qualified for the jobs we need to fill right now, and who would be a good lead for future jobs or jobs that may be coming available in the next season. So it's that lead capture and that nurturing that's also being built out by putting intelligent automations in place and also rethinking the application process.
That's awesome. It's kind of funny when we think about the evolution of technology. What it has done for us as TA practitioners is we don't have to live in the world of just post and hope anymore, right? Because to be frank, that's not enough. And especially for this conversation, seasonal hiring, focused hiring, and hiring a lot in a short amount of time, it isn't enough. So we have to grow outside of that. So I appreciate that, Stacey. That's awesome. All right, let's take a step forward here. When we think about delivering an experience, let's really get hyper-focused on seasonal recruiting. Seasonal recruiting is such an interesting concept because a lot of folks, when we say seasonal hiring, we think, okay, wintertime, getting ready for the holiday season, we know we got to ramp up for that. Well, in reality, seasonal hiring is really about any time that we as a business have to hire an elevated volume during a short period of time to ramp up for our business needs. There are a lot of folks that we talk to on a regular basis. That may be springtime. So as we're transitioning right now from winter into spring, obviously the further north you are, the colder it is. So that's still happening right now. When we think about industries like outdoor living, there's a lot of hiring that has to happen right now for outdoor living sales and organizations that will happen over the coming months. That type of hiring can be seasonality. So what we're trying to do is deliver these hyper-personalized, customized messages for the right person at the right time, and AI and automations can help with that. Kevin, let's take a step forward. So when we think about what we can do in this process, so when we think about seasonal hiring, what we have to do is go fast, and we have to execute a high volume of talent acquisition in a very short amount of time. What are the things that we have to do? Number one, screening, right? When we're screening, up until the last few years, screening has always required humans. Like we have to have human eyeballs on a candidate, on a profile, on an application, on a resume. And we're trying to screen for the qualifications that we're looking for. The reality of it is in today's world, we can use AI and automations for that. So we can drastically speed up the process using technology. Thanks to COVID, among other influencing factors over the past several years, we now have all kinds of interview types out there. It could be face-to-face interviews, pre-recorded interviews. It could be video interviews, panels, one-on-ones, you name it. We run the gamut with the interview types that we set up. So the process of screening and then scheduling those interviews and getting them to happen and then collecting feedback on that takes time, right? It's not something that happens immediately. AI and automations can help with that. And then moving candidates through the next step of the process. So Stacey, I'd be curious to get your take on this. When we think about the standard busy work, if you will, that organizations have to go through when ramping up for seasonal hiring like this, what are some of the benefits for using technology for screening, for scheduling interviews, and then moving candidates through the next step of the process?
Oh, where do we start? The benefits to the company, first and foremost, are savings back for the recruiter time, right? So these more monotonous administrative type tasks, right? Asking screening questions that are generally standardized for each role, having to do the back and forth of scheduling with those qualified candidates, that takes up so much time. When really, if we could automate those pieces, right? If we have those standardized screening questions that we could put up front, collect those answers to, if we could put automated scheduling in place, not only is that going to allow the recruiters to have more time back in their day, it's going to allow them more focus to build relationships with those qualified candidates. And potentially focus more of their time on those harder to fill roles, right? Where you can't maybe automate screening. So allowing them more time to focus and be more successful in their roles. Now, from a candidate perspective, it's a numbers game, right? It's very competitive for hiring organizations to get those qualified candidates, get them fast, and give a better offer than the competition. So the better that a candidate experience could be in terms of moving them forward to the next step, making it clear what their next step is, or even empowering them by, giving them that auto screening experience and then allowing them to self-schedule their interview, you're way more likely to get that candidate on the hook and move them forward faster than the competition who doesn't have that in place. If they apply to you and the competitor on the same day, you can move them forward in a matter of minutes, whereas it might take on average for your competitor 3 to 5 days for them to even review the application, go through the information, and get back to that candidate. So it's the speed to be able to capture those qualified candidates sooner, and it's also the efficiency for the hiring team, hiring managers, and recruiters who are trying to move this process forward.
Awesome. It's kind of funny we talk about speed. I just saw a post on LinkedIn the other day. It's a fantastic meme. So thinking about the coronation that happened this weekend, the caption on the left, it was a picture of Prince Charles, probably when he was, I don't know, a teenager. And it said, "When I applied to the job." And then on the right-hand side was a picture of the King Charles, right, being coronated this weekend. It said, "When I heard back from the recruiter." So the reality of it is that's not good enough anymore, right? We have to speed up the process, and technology can help us with that. So if you see that meme or whoever posted that meme on LinkedIn, awesome, well done. That made me smile a whole bunch. All right, let's take another step forward. So when we think about this process of sourcing, screening, scheduling, what is the actual impact that it has on the day-to-day operations of a talent acquisition team? Well, the reality of it is very, very impactful. So what we find is TA professionals are spending almost a third of their week sourcing, screening, and scheduling roles for candidates for a single role. And that's 1/3 of their life really being spent on this time. So I think what we have a really awesome opportunity of is reducing this and taking this 33% as far down as we can, because as recruiters, we're really focused on what? Well, recruiting, talking to people, getting in front of humans, right? If we can eliminate this busy work, then we're more effective as recruiters. So in your world, Stacey, if you could wave the magic wand and reduce this number, where are some of the organizations that we work with on a regular basis? What are they trying to get this number down to? Or what are some of the efficiencies that they get when they get that number down?
Yeah, so ideally, I mean, of course, with a focus on talent acquisition, automation, we'd love to see that percentage to be low, maybe 15 or 10%. And again, focused more on those harder to source, harder to screen, high importance roles. Now, in order to get down there, the benefits of that would be not only like we talked about, my dog is very excited. I'm not sure if you can hear her. We had talked about being able to automate that screening, automate that scheduling, right? Put those questions up front and allow candidates to auto progress through the process. Not only does that allow time back into the recruiter's schedule, essentially decreasing that 33% down a little bit, but also putting automations in place for the folks that are leads. Maybe they're not qualified for this role, or maybe it's a not right now. There could be automated follow-up. Again, that's something that our recruiters are doing, those drip campaigns, or hiring for the upcoming season. Being able to have automations in place that can look at lead statuses or certain tags on those leads, and having automated follow-up. So there's kind of more of a personal touch of, hey, we saw you were interested in this role. Did you know in the summer season, we're also hiring for, a role that may also fit. So being intelligent about how we're not only screening and scheduling, but following up with those leads who maybe haven't submitted a full application, but we want to keep them warm, we want to keep them engaged.
Awesome. I love that. Just the focus on speed, and personalization. That's a really big point, because as we led this call off with is really the reminder that we are pre-wired for instant gratification, and that's the name of the game here.
Yep.
Awesome. Okay, so let's kind of continue the conversation a little bit, and let's think about as organizations that have to deal with seasonal hiring, what are some of the things that can slow us down? Right? What kind of bottlenecks or chokes the team off when it comes to seasonal hiring? Well, number one is churn and attrition. So having to fill the same role over and over again because we keep churning through the role, that can create a bottleneck. That can slow us down. It can also be a drag and drain on your recruiters because it's the same thing over again. I just filled that role 3 times in the last month. Now I have to fill it again. That's difficult. So technology can help there. It can help ease the pain of that burden. We talk about thriving businesses, right? When our organizations expand, well, we have to support that. So the HR team, the TA team, is 100% a part of that business expansion. That does mean we have to execute additional work. Well, the reality of it is most organizations are not in a situation right now in 2023 where we can just get more money and buy more tools and do more things as we expand. We have to be more efficient than we ever have before. And that's the name of the game when it comes to expansion, high volume, and seasonal hiring is efficiency. And we all know our organizations have those really wonderful, attractive roles that for some reason just have huge volumes of applications. Or leads or interests or candidates coming into the system. That will slow us down. And when we talk about seasonality, again, doesn't necessarily mean the holiday season. It means any time when our organization has to execute a elevated volume of targeted hiring during a short period of time. That's seasonality. Okay? All right, so let's think about that a little deeper. When we use this term seasonality, we don't just mean the holidays. I'm going to say that about 14 more times today. It can mean a myriad of things. So in healthcare, for example, when you talk about the winter months, and whatever hemisphere you're in, there's a lot of seasonality that comes along with that. So whether it's hospitals or pharmacies, they have to ramp up for cold and flu season. I've already mentioned today outdoor living, for an example. In the northern hemisphere, it's springtime. Hopefully, we've already ramped up for our hiring because businesses start to take off. When we think about tax season, for example, tax season happens January through April, but the hiring actually happens in November, December. So organizations have to ramp up much earlier than the January to April timeframe. Graduation season. Graduation means a lot of different things. It means travel season starts to pick up. It means retail starts to pick up. Throwing parties, hospitality, all of that starts to pick up. And we've got to be hiring for that basically now because the season's about to hit. And then, oh, yes, by the way, there is something called the holiday hiring, where it's distribution, fulfillment centers, retail, B2C organizations across the board have to ramp up. So these are the types of seasons that we see in the world today. And it doesn't just mean one particular season. It's not a one size fits all. It's this concept of, again, elevated focused hiring in a shorter period of time. Okay. All right, let's talk about some examples. So we're going to share kind of 3 different examples of organizations that we work with in terms of their season and what does their season mean to them. So Stacy, I'll let you lead it off with a particular story here, and I'll let you take the first one, and I'll take the second.
Yeah. So starting off, just leading off of what Ben said, seasonal hiring doesn't have to match the calendar seasons, right? It can be what's important, whether it's tax season or the summer months, if we have lifeguards that need to be filled for certain roles. The biggest piece of advice is get in front of it. Don't wait to hire, especially for those roles requiring certifications. So I just had thrown out that example of a lifeguard. A lot of them need to be CPR certified. So don't wait until May to start doing your hiring. You've got to think months in advance. Can you start putting automations into place? Can you reach out to your previous seasonal employees and see if they're interested in your upcoming seasonal offerings? Another piece to keep in mind while you're thinking about your busy season is you're always going to be competing for candidates across industries, right? So that time to offer is absolutely critical. And we're going to keep driving this point home that need for speed is absolutely what we're looking for. Remember, we're dating ourselves here, Ben and I, back in the old days of dial-up internet where you were lucky to even get connected. Now, if there's a lag of 5 seconds while a web page loads, people are over it. They're gone, right? We don't have that luxury of expecting things to roll out slowly. So that time to offer is critical. And one of the quotes that we have here on the right that kind of highlights that is keeping in mind your candidates are not generally applying just for one job. They're generally applying to 10 or more jobs. So the company that best meets their needs and is able to follow up the fastest, they're going to end up winning that candidate. So don't let your process be the thing that slows you down and keeps you from bringing on or attracting those great candidates. And if we can move to the next slide. Okay, so in a case study that we have, this is the example of back to school season. And one of our customers is a multinational early childhood education center. Now, coming out of the COVID days, this employer needed to hire a minimum of 10,000 licensed classroom teachers and daycare workers. In fact, they were losing up to $1 million a day because there were 80,000 potential students that they could not hire teachers to get in front of. So that's a massive business impact, $1 million per day. Like, that's unheard of. So when we had conversations with this customer, we started talking about those talent acquisition automations. So getting the right jobs in front of those candidates, putting some auto screening and auto scheduling into place. Now, that auto screening did include asking about licensure. So were you a licensed classroom teacher? And those candidates got priority to get fast-tracked immediately. So what happened when we put some of these automations in place, we saw, and we're still seeing, an average of 3 minutes on the candidate experience to go from submitting your interest in a certified teacher role to setting up your interview. 3 minutes, right? I think it's a cross-industry average right now that when a candidate submits their application, they submit their interest in a job, they're going to wait a minimum of 3 days, sometimes weeks. Sometimes they don't hear back at all. 3 minutes to be able to go and submit your interest to that job, understand that you're qualified, and be able to schedule your interview. That's game changing. Now, because of that expedited apply and interview process, we're seeing 92% application completion rate. So we started off this conversation talking about over 90% of candidates that start the application process don't finish. Well, look at this. Over 90% of the candidates that are starting their teacher application process are seeing it all the way through because we have a faster, more automated process. And for this particular hiring organization, they are putting this in place for nearly all of their teachers. 99% of teachers hired are coming through that automated process. The other 1% may actually be through referrals. So they're putting this in place for that teacher role because it is of extreme importance to them, and they're having all of their teacher candidates go through that process.
Awesome. Well, it's such a great story. And anytime we have an impact on organizations that have such a critical, important mission, it kind of makes it even cooler. Let's talk about another situation, though. So we've talked about seasonality, short-term, laser-focused, increased volume. Let's be honest, though. There are some organizations where their season is really every day. And it is high volume, full throttle every single day. When that's the case, like, you need an always on approach. You need the ability to go full speed all the time. And when we talk about frontline or high volume hiring, it's about being where candidates are. Don't just expect them or require them to go to a desktop anymore, because if you are, it's probably not going to end so great. We have to be where they are, which could be social media, texting, so on and so forth. And then when we talk about organizations that have second and third shift hiring, we need to think about when we're communicating. The hours of 9 to 5 don't work for a third shift organization. Hopefully they're at home resting and sleeping and not worrying about your emails and SMS. So what can we do to utilize AI, machine learning, and technology to communicate with those individuals? And then you have to empower on-site managers. That is so critical, because when you think about the average on-site manager, whether it's CPG manufacturing, frontline manufacturing, retail, or transportation, these leaders of our organizations have about 35 different things that they have to knock out that day on top of hiring. So we have to be able to empower them and elevate that individual, knowing that recruiting is not their full time. So when we think about another kind of case study example here, we'll talk about a very, very large retailer. So Kevin, if you move forward,
Sure.
There's an organization that we get to work with on a regular basis. They're one of the largest convenience store operators really in the world. So they actually have over 20,000 locations worldwide. So for them, it's all about always on. It's always on recruiting. It's about technology, speed, automation, and personalization. And really their family is 124,000 employees strong, and they're in 26 different countries. So when you want to talk about full scale, high volume hiring on a global scale, it doesn't get more global high volume than this organization here. And what they're able to do is utilize technology that can automate the process of sourcing, screening, scheduling, and speeding up the hiring process. So our ultimate goal in situations like this is to go from a hire cycle that could be 1 week, 2 week, 3 weeks, and try to get that down to days, if not hours. That's the ultimate goal here, is to make sure that we have an always on engine that can recruit these hard to fill roles, second, third shifts across the world, and do it as quickly as possible. So we've covered care, we've covered retail. Let's talk a little bit about healthcare. Stacey, I'll let you take the next one.
Yeah, so we've mentioned some frontline actual high volume roles, but we can talk about these automations in AI across different types of roles. So the first thing we want to say is you can develop multiple hiring journeys. There may be some of those more transactional roles, right? Those high churn roles where you can standardize those screening questions and put them up front. Absolutely, put those automated processes in place for those more transactional roles. But one size does not fit all for your candidates, right? That's kind of the world that we're moving away from, is having the same type of application and hiring process for every role. So really what is critical to think about is what is the best hiring journey for the type of role that we need to fill. So of course, the name of the game, you want to keep your recruiters focused on those high touch activities. Are there credentials that need to be verified? In the example, in the quote here on the right, coming from Lifetime Fitness, one of their seasonal roles is that lifeguard role. And those folks do need to be licensed or certified. So having the recruiters be able to have those conversations, follow up, and actually ascertain, yes, this is a true certification, that's more of a high touch relationship building type of an action. That's what we want to preserve recruiters' time for. Not necessarily getting on the phone for every screening call when it can be automated. Those transactional roles we were talking about. Another thing to consider to kind of develop these different hiring journeys for different roles is thinking about different interview types. Now, Ben had talked about this at the beginning of the call, but here's another way to drive that home. There could be options. You may give options to your candidates if you're able to support a choose your own journey type of an experience for your candidates. But thinking about the type of role that you have, should this be something that you're moving so quick to hire that once you find out if they're qualified, you're able to say, hey, we want to offer you, give you a tentative offer for this role. We want you on board. Let's schedule your onboarding call. You can move that fast. So instead of moving to a screening interview type of a conversation, it's hey, you're screened in. We want to offer you a job. Let's get on the phone to talk through the actual details of what that offer would look like and answer any questions you have about the role. Other type of interview types that may be less aggressive or more standard to some of us is that of course the phone call. We can have that phone interview, pre-recorded video interview. Do you have certain roles that are highly customer facing? Airline attendants often have to do pre-recorded video interviews because it matches the requirements of the job, right? You're going to be in front of customers. You're going to be customer facing. So asking that candidate to complete a video interview isn't really out of the realm of job relatedness. And of course, for some of those more specific, like distribution, retail, even food service type of roles, you might have them come on site for an in-person interview. So think about, supporting these different journeys with different interview types and different next steps based on what it is that you've learned about them through lead capture and screening. And I think our next example has to do with the certifications and qualifications. So here's another customer example we have. This is a massive healthcare client of ours, and they're focusing their automations on direct care and nursing roles, right? So this isn't traditionally what we think of when we think of frontline high volume hiring. These are professional credentialed nurses and direct care professionals. Now, the use case for this particular customer was they have over 500 locations, right? And 45,000 employees across those locations. So they're having to continually source, screen, and hire staff that have the type of specialized skills they need for their industry. So those clinical rehabilitative skills, right? those roles are in such a high demand, and they're getting that same pressure we all are, right? Speed is of the essence. We need to get them into the job. They need to get that offer as soon as possible once we find out that they're qualified. So how do we do that? And this is where we helped partner with this client, again, putting some automations into place for them, right? So with automated screening and scheduling, we can screen in those direct care and nursing candidates and allow them to self-schedule time on the assigned recruiter's calendar. There's no delay. Very similar to our teacher example up front, this happens in between 3 to 5 minutes for the candidate. So super rapid process. And we've seen over 15,000 interviews have been scheduled by those candidates per month since we went live with some of these automations. Now, what that translates to is your recruiters aren't having to chase around folks and coordinate schedules. They're not having to ask the same screening questions over and over again. So this has actually equated to about 45,000 hours of recruiter time saved per month. 45,000 hours. And that time can be spent following up on leads for other high need roles, checking credentials if it should be, or allowing recruiters to make themselves more efficient in their process. And again, consistency. So 100% of those high need roles in this case are going through this type of automated flow. So not every role at this customer site is going through an automated process. It wasn't necessary for every role, but those nursing and direct care roles that we wanted to get in and get hired, they're the ones that we have 100% going through this automated process.
45,000 an hour. Every time I see that, my heart jumps out of my chest. That's crazy. So I think this morning, we've talked about speed, automation, matching the right person, the right job, being able to identify qualifications, what we need as an organization. So I know there's a lot of people probably watching this going, yeah, great, but is there anything out there that can actually do that? So what we thought would be a good idea is maybe team take the next few minutes and walk through the technology that we're talking about in terms of what's been developed at Phenom to literally accomplish exactly what we've talked about this morning. So Stacy, it would be awesome if you could do a very quick high-level demo for us and kind of show us what the heck it is that we're talking about.
Yes. Yeah. So I'm going to walk you through an example candidate experience using a fake company name, but this is tailored specifically to the transportation industry. So we wanted to give you a sense of what that candidate experience could look like with automations in place. Now, in this example, we'll be going through the chatbot channel. But again, as we said on the top of the call, when you're thinking about automations and when you're thinking about your seasonal hiring, think about multiple channels, right? So can we put these automations in place for SMS, WhatsApp, that apply now flow on the career site, in addition to chatbot? Make sure you have that in mind. And for this example, we do support those other channels as well, but we just wanted to pick one to kind of walk through together. So put yourself in the seat of the candidate who's going to a career site. They really need to get a job fast. So what you can do is start to curate an experience for the candidates to walk through, essentially taking that candidate by the hand, giving them a certain question or lead-in that they need at the time to be able to walk them down the process of getting the job match that is right for them. So using key pieces of information, what we can do is actually serve up this curated list of jobs that are now personalized to this candidate. So based on the type of job category that they're interested in, based on full-time, part-time availability, and even based on their location, you had seen we pulled in location, we're able to generate a list of jobs that are curated to their interests and are also in order of proximity to where they live, right? So thinking about that location as part of that matching process. So what our candidates can do now that they've rapidly been matched to the job, let's move them on forward. Here's some of that automation we had talked about, being able to do that lead capture up front, automating that information. We talked a lot about automating the screening process. There are certain screening questions that are just standardized and common across all jobs. Is that something that we can put in an automated process? Absolutely. There may be different types of questions that you need to ask for certain roles up front. So it doesn't necessarily have to be yes or no questions that you're asking your candidates. But with those automated screening questions up front, now you can, without any ask for the recruiter's time, have those candidates be screened in or screened out. Now, those screened out candidates, they're not going to know they're screened out. They're going to stay as a lead. They're going to get a thank you page that says, we have all the information we need at this time. We'll reach out if applicable. But for those candidates, for your hard to fill or high need roles, you can have them automatically get a piece of feedback that we're ready to move to the next step right away. So based on being qualified by that automated screening process, you can automatically push them on forward to the next step, which in this case is to get on the calendar with a hiring manager or a recruiter. So using integration with the recruiter's calendar, we can serve up real-time availability. So this candidate, again, is able to click through, choose a time that works best for them, and boom. And boom, just like that, they are confirmed for their interview, right? This is a process that takes a matter of minutes, and it's not standard. We're still not seeing this across a lot of hiring organizations.
Stacy, 2 questions.
Yeah.
So if I want this to show up on my Outlook or Google Calendar, will it flow through?
Yeah, as a recruiter?
Yeah, you bet.
Oh, absolutely. Yep. So with the integration to the recruiter or hiring manager's calendar, once a candidate selects their time, not only will you as the interviewer get a notification, but you'll also get that calendar attachment. So it'll be on your calendar, blocked, ready for you to accept and confirm that interview.
Awesome. And that's a really important call out, because there are a lot of folks probably on this call, on the webinar watching, going, whoa, recruiter's calendar. In a lot of cases, there is no recruiter, right? It's just the hiring manager. The same thing applies, right? Where we're qualifying the candidate and scheduling them on the hiring manager's calendar directly, because there is no recruiter, right?
Yeah. If your hiring managers do not have company email addresses, that is still something that we can help serve up. Is how do we capture that hiring manager's availability and still make this process automated for them? So we're able to support that use case as well.
Awesome.
And Ben, I know we're almost at time here. One last thing I want to put in our viewers' back pocket is potentially automating the referral process. So our candidates who have just gone through this beautiful experience of being screened and scheduled, how refreshing, they know what their next step is and who they're meeting with. What if we were to ask them at this time, do they know anybody they'd like to refer to this organization? So you can also get clever and do things like automate your candidate to candidate referrals. So capturing an additional person as a lead for your organization, and you can support your referral incentives program if you have that as well. So just another tidbit to keep in your back pocket as you're thinking about automation and how you can use it to help support your jobs.
Awesome. And one more question, Stacy. So we're seeing a particular bot cadence. We can execute this type of strategy and function multiple different ways, right?
Oh, yeah. So I wanted to show the upfront job matching process. But if a candidate were to go to the career site and self-select a job that they're interested in, they already know they want to go in and check out a nursing role. They can go through the same type of abbreviated answering the screening questions in website format instead of the back and forth, and still have access to that auto scheduling as well. So many paths to the same destination. We want to make sure we're reaching candidates where they are.
Awesome. And then as far as that tie back to seasonal hiring, I think the ultimate goal here is, instead of hello to hire in a few weeks, let's go in a few hours. And it's pretty cool to see the technology aligned with that capability. So I appreciate you giving us a very high level look at some of the technology. That's awesome.
Yeah, happy to.
And Kevin, I think we're getting close.
Yeah, it looks like we're running up on time. I would just encourage anybody, if you're still here, we have a comment. If you want to leave any questions, we'll be happy to answer those while we're still here. But we just want to give you a quick rundown of a few of the points that we made earlier. With high volume hiring automation workflows, you're able to meet, screen, and progress qualified candidates in minutes. As we saw in one of those case studies, it could be even 3 minutes from hello to hire between when they're first applying and when they're scheduled for an interview. So all of these things, having a mobile-friendly application process, meeting candidates where they are through chat, text, email, on your career site, those are all things that are going to boost your application rate from clicking apply to actually finishing the application. Now, on the recruiter side, being able to automatically coordinate and schedule interviews is saving tens of thousands of hours for them monthly, as we saw in the other case study related to physical rehabilitation and healthcare. Now, these things are also good for, in a convenience store instance, second and third shift, you're able to reach out to these people and allow them to schedule interviews when it's convenient for them, or even conduct an interview, whether it's a one-way video interview or answering screening questions when it's convenient for them. So through all these things, we're able to reduce, the redundant recruiter tasks that they're bogged down with up to 50% of their time or 33% of the time just scheduling interviews, and really allow them to focus on why we're all in recruiting and the people business, which is talking to people and helping them find the right job. So through all these things, we're helping individuals and companies engage, re-engage, and hire faster. And if you'd like to learn more, we have this our website, High Volume Hiring, or feel free to reach out to Ben. And thank you again for joining us today.
Awesome. Thanks, Kevin. Thanks for having us.
Thanks.
Thank you.